Oh, I talked to a lot of them up there, and they said, no, we can't fight these fires.
He's talking about that massive Carlton Complex wildfire in central Washington this summer. He's in a group of property owners preparing to take on the DNR for negligence.
KREM 2 News at 6 starts now.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Jane McCarthy.
Thanks for being with us tonight. I'm Randy Shaw. It's been almost 4 months since the Carlton Complex wildfire blackened acreage and swept through central Washington, destroying hundreds of homes.
Two at Your Side has been staying on top of recovery efforts as well as growing criticism of the State Department of Natural Resources. KREM 2's Whitney Ward has spent months tracking the accusations. She spoke with several property owners who filed a letter with DNR claiming DNR leaders told fire crews to let the Carlton Complex burn after it started.
The damage can be seen for miles, and behind all of this charred landscape, there is one recurring claim that this fire didn't have to be so big. In fact, many are claiming that state fire crews, specifically from DNR, ignored this fire when it was small and allowed it to grow so big that it burned many of their homes to the ground. Tonight, I'm taking those claims directly to the top, to the DNR's Commissioner of Public Lands, to ask what went wrong. It was a wildfire like Washington has never seen before. It was a literal firestorm that burned through nearly 400 square miles from Twisp to Methow to Brewster. In Pateros, entire neighborhoods were reduced to ash overnight.
We'll never ever be able to replace what we had.
And almost immediately after the flames died down, criticism began popping up of how DNR firefighting crews could have stopped the fire before it got so big.
This was a man-caused disaster from the beginning all the way through.
Kim Maltais and his wife lost their home and everything in it near Twisp, plus several cars and pieces of heavy machinery.
Millions.
But that, he says, isn't even the worst part.
She kept telling me they're not coming, nobody will come, nobody will help.
Kim tells me he first saw the flames when they were small, the morning of July 17th.
And it was a backing fire. It was just creeping down the hill.
He says all day a team of DNR and contract fire crews sat parked in his field down the street, watching the flames but not putting them out, until finally it reached his dry hay and exploded, jumping the highway and coming for his house.
Maybe around 5 o'clock. And about that time, the wind shifted. And then I knew these guys aren't going to do anything. It's over.
Within minutes, it was an inferno. Kim remembers turning his team of sled dogs loose, hoping for the best, as flames towered all around him, reaching into the treetops up to 300 feet high.
Just got down on my hands and knees, and I crawled over and found the Jeep, and I got in, and I could breathe then. And I thought, well, I got to get out of here. And I got out. And I got to the road, and I got up, and all those people were sitting in that field. There must have been 6, 7 engines, a cat, were sitting in that field. I was mad. I was just mad. It was unbelievable.
Did you go and confront them?
Oh yeah, I went over there, and I laid into them a little bit, and then I thought, well, here it comes. You know, I don't have time. I got to save this place.
The fire was still moving toward his mother's old home, the house where he grew up.
And I was, you know, come on, to those engines, and they just sat there.
But Kim kept fighting.
Well, I still had water, so I hooked some hoses together, and I got down in here, and I stopped it.
By yourself?
By myself.
It's a story so shocking, it seems truly unbelievable, except he's not the only one.
Oh, I talked to a lot of them up there, and they said, no, we can't fight these fires.
They came in, and they were there a half an hour and left.
He sat there all day and did nothing.
Nothing?
Nothing.
Celia Campbell lost her entire home and her daughter's home. Both sat on family property they've had for generations. She also tells me DNR fire crews were parked down her driveway all day as the flames closed in.
And there was never anything dropped on it. Nobody ever attempted to stop it or anything.
Our responsibility is to fight the fire on the wildland and obviously try and keep it from reaching the structures. But we're not responsible for putting out house fires.
So if a DNR crew saw a fire that was burning a house, would they not act?
They would act as much as they could to keep the fire from reaching the home. And if it was too dangerous to approach the home, they may not approach the home.
DNR Commissioner of Public Lands Peter Goldmark insists hot, dry conditions fed the fire and that nothing could have stopped it.
There was a large National Guard helicopter there with over 1,000 gallons of water in its bucket. And the fire is approaching, and the water is discharged on the fire. And the fire doesn't even pause. It doesn't even notice it.
So is it standard operating procedure to put it out right away, or are there instances where you let it burn?
There are never, and I underline never, incidents where DNR lets the fire burn.
Okay.
Never.
So there are some persistent claims that DNR crews were told to stand down, to let nature take its course and let it burn.
That would never be a command that a DNR staffer or commander would ever give.
There was a fire that was coming.
But Brewster attorney Alex Thomason says that is not the case. He claims DNR crews had ample opportunity to stop the flames when it was still 4 small fires that began as lightning strikes.
In one case, for example, the Cougar Flat strike, 2 guys went out, they had that completely under control. Some DNR bureaucrats showed up and said, "Get off our property, we'll have you trespassed." The DNR then let that fire grow. They just abandoned the fire. A wildfire. That fire is the one that came down and merged and burned Pateros. Good morning. I'm here to file tort claims.
Thomason has already filed notice in Olympia that nearly 100 property owners across Okanogan County are now building claims against DNR, saying the state is responsible for their losses.
How do you go up against the state? What is it going to take to prove this?
What it's going to take is just people to tell their stories. The evidence speaks very clearly that you had firefighters that wanted to fight, that were requesting permission, and you had bureaucrats that said they couldn't. When the fire first started, it wasn't some secret. It was called in by lots of people. Forest Service smoke jumpers flew over several fires. They radioed down. They asked for permission to jump. The DNR said no.
What about the people who say there were smoke jumpers, for example, who saw the lightning strike when it was smaller, before it blew up into a big giant fire, and had asked permission to jump on it and put it out, and they were told no?
So I'm not sure what the exact, I've heard that story before, but it's important to understand that DNR does not control the Forest Service smoke jumpers. Okay. So I don't know what happened in that particular incident.
Does it make you question if any of this did happen when you're hearing it from not just one place, not even just 2 or 3 people, but multiple families spread out across that entire region?
So it just increases my resolve to do as much as we can during the off-season to train, motivate, and equip our firefighters to be the best possible firefighters they can.
DNR had command of 3 out of 4 fires when they first started because they sparked on DNR protected land. A multi-agency Type 2 incident management team didn't take over until almost 3 days later. At the time, there were also big fires in Oregon. Goldmark tells me DNR didn't have enough manpower or equipment in that first critical 24 hours.
We had orders from our incident commanders for resources they couldn't find.
What would have made the difference?
Having more helicopters would have made a great difference. Having more staff and fire engines would have made a difference.
Goldmark is now asking state lawmakers for a full $70 million to cover firefighting expenses already incurred, plus another $4.5 million for additional firefighters, helicopters, trucks, and training.
Do you think that it will be given more weight, given what happened in Carlton Complex?
It's my every hope that it is, because we need to have more resources.
Goldmark says he is also asking for $20 million in the next budget to thin Washington forests. He agrees that was a factor in the severity of the Carlton complex, but he is adamant his DNR crews acted heroically.
Whether or not DNR crews didn't participate when they should have, I doubt very much, because we have this ethic where we always try our utmost.
Do you take it personally when people say, that DNR person over there who was parked down the street watched my house burn and didn't do a thing?
It's hard to know what's frustration and emotion following a terrible fire and loss, and how much of that is factual. I know we've all been in situations where we were upset because of things happened around us and there's blame laid down, and it's hard to know how much of that blame is fairly judged and how much of it isn't.
But homeowners like Kim Maltais say DNR is the only one to blame.
This is criminal. This is absolutely criminal what they did.
DNR still has more than a month to settle these homeowners' claims if the agency does not settle. Alex Thomason tells me he will file an official lawsuit, but even that is just the beginning of this process. It will likely take many more months or even years before this is finally settled. In Okanagan County tonight, I'm Whitney Ward, KREM 2 News.